Okay, everybody, welcome. This is the Town of Red Hook budget meeting for October 6th. Would you be kind enough to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the
and
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
October 6th. Would you be kind enough to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Okay, so that is where we have. I pledge. Okay. All right, very good. Why don't we jump right in? I have the same few slides that I put in front of each tentative budget. This is the budget for 2021 fiscal year, and I think it suffice to say, if ever there were a time where we had a lack of visibility, it certainly would be for the 2021 budget. And so as we discuss, especially expense items, I would ask you to please consider that we can, and we always do, make budget adjustments during the course of the year. It would not, I believe, be prudent to increase the appropriations beyond what they are at the moment, given that some of our revenue expectations have been underperforming even when we adjusted back in May and June. So let's get started. Just a few bullet points for folks. Highlights, I would hardly call them highlights. Maybe we'll just talk about bullet points. The budget maintains a flat tax rate for the next fiscal year, provided that things transpire in the way that the totals add up to be. The household impact is unchanged from 2020. And so when we talk about keeping it flat or slightly lower, which it is the case for the 5th consecutive year, it means that we are in fact increasing the taxes, the total taxes, and we are increasing the appropriations for the various funds, but we are maintaining the same tax rate. So the implication to the average household remains the same. We are just utilizing growth in the expenses based upon the growth in our economy and our total tax roll. And we have seen an increase in our tax roll, and hopefully we'll continue to see that as the years transpire. Okay, the budget maintains current staffing levels and wages. It freezes wages, it freezes staffing levels. There's no proposed change in staffing in any of the departments. It does not reduce fund balance. In 2021, we have reduced fund balance in some cases fairly significantly in the A fund. Looking at where we are, at least at the moment, we've got a decrease of, in excess of $400,000. That was anticipated. We knew we were going to use fund balance for our rec park projects. But the 2021 budget does not utilize a reduction in fund balance. We've seen some reduction in both the B and the DB already in 2020. And the year is not over, and the revenues have not come in as expected. Just some highlights from the comptroller's office. Our risk assessment remains very low, 3.3. It's not a perfect rating. We thought we might have a perfect rating. It's very close to perfect. Our bond rating is still AA. It's been reaffirmed. One of the things that we're particularly proud of is that as a municipality, we implemented a living wage. So everyone who works here makes $17 an hour or more. Over the course of the years, we've made significant community investments. However, even though we have not raised taxes, everything from the sidewalks on Route 9 East to redoing our town parking lot, we've mentioned the improvements and expansion to our recreation parks. It's been very successful. You'll be happy to know that people are really loving and enjoying the parks, both sides, east and west. We have retrofitted the town campus and continue to do so. So some of the things for the folks at home who may not be familiar with the work we've already done, but we have solar on Town Hall, which has been here now for a decade. Last year, we just swapped out our very old and inefficient HVAC equipment. We now have air source heat pumps, which are cleaner and more efficient, and hopefully will save us some money. Obviously, folks know that the community solar project was constructed and went live December 31st, 2019. As we've mentioned, that project has been awarded New York State Planning Federation Excellence Award. We've had some land acquisition projects, whether it's additional lands to our rec parks and trails. We've acquired an additional acre here on the town campus. We have, though we're not making significant contributions to equipment either in rec or in highway in 2020 or 2021, we had in the past from 2016 to 2019 made increasing investments. And the same with roads. We have upped our local contribution from what it was 5 or 6 years ago. And we're making an investment in transportation for seniors and others. We talk about every year, we want to make sure that we acknowledge that we can't do this work by ourselves. We do it with the dedication of employees and the many volunteers. We also can't fund it by ourselves many times. So we have a lot of partnerships and grants. These are just some of the dollar figures that we've received over the last 4 years and change. And we continue to try to leverage any chance we get the monies that we have in order to bring about these capital projects. One of the things we will touch on very briefly, but it's in the budget message, is we are going to be modernizing operations. We hope to do so in time for this tax season, but certainly for during the course of 2021 for the following tax season. We want to make it possible that residents can pay their taxes and water bills online. And so we are looking at the software upgrade that's necessary for that. We think especially during COVID time, this will be critical for folks. We talk about some of the moves that we make, those energy efficiency moves that we hope to see some savings for. We also refinanced our debt a few years back. We were able to take advantage of lower interest rates and book in a significant savings just on that one transaction. In 2020 and 2021, we are exploring and hope to successfully complete an expansion of shared services, certainly in the highway department where we do already conduct shared services. And then we have a grant-funded court study to see whether or not we can house the joint courts of village and town in one facility and provide a better service to our constituents, and also benefit from some efficiencies of co-locating those two courts. Last year, I think I started showing for the folks at home so they could appreciate that we are a small piece of the pie. We recognize that it's very important that we do our part to keep Red Hook affordable for folks and try to hold down taxes. But we do recognize that we are not the lion's share of the tax implication for residents. If you live in the town, you are paying 8% of your taxes for town taxes, and the overwhelming majority, obviously, for school taxes. And then the next highest category is Dutchess County, 12% of your taxes on average. Again, this is an average taxpayer. For the Village of Tivoli residents, we would be the third largest, I guess, at 1.06 mill rate. We're 3% of the total tax bill for Village of Tivoli residents. Their village taxes are 13% of the bill, and Dutchess County 10%, and school 71%. And these are the latest figures that were available to us and will be updated to reflect the 2020-2021 school taxes. Same thing for a Village of Red Hook resident. If you reside in the village, 3% of your taxes go towards town, 66 towards school, 19% to the Village of Red Hook. We talked about keeping taxes down, doing our part, making sure that Red Hook can remain affordable, especially now that we're seeing at least a very temporary influx of folks from urban areas wanting to relocate, and it's putting pricing pressure on some of the housing here. So general A fund, we have decreased that rate by 6% since 2015. And that's the proposed rate for 2021, 1.0551. Here's the budget message, which you've all had a chance to read, and I think it just covers many of the things that I've already talked about. In addition to street lights, we are swapping out our street lights as soon as the next few weeks. It'll be a 6 to 8 week project, and we should see some financial benefit from that in 2021. We're also soon to be going out to bid for the highway solar that's been planned for many years and partially grant funded. We'll be doing that over the course of the next several months. We'll have more on that as it evolves. We did retrofit the highway garage with new LED lighting. We hope that'll produce some savings as well. I think that's it. You know, we recognize in the budget message here that we needed to help some of our, local agencies with the support of our residents during the, certainly the initial portions of the COVID outbreak. And I think that we need to be prepared to do that again if there's either a second wave or just a continuation and a spiking of this first wave. And so, we'll work together with all the volunteers and our local agencies to make sure that we are assisting our residents in need. Salaries, again, salaries of elected officials. They are frozen for 2021, and these are the salaries of the various officers. Okay, so very good. Let's jump in. I know you've had a chance, town board members, to review the various funds, so I'm not going to go line by line. I thought maybe what I would do is just highlight certain things where there's significant changes, or maybe just something to add to the various budget lines. But if there's something that you want me to provide you with additional detail, I know you have a lot of detail in your binders for the various budget lines, but do let me know. So why don't we tackle A fund initially, and again we'll go through sort of the first section. There is all related to payroll items and staffing, and all of that is essentially the same. Moving on down, we do have a little bump up in tax collection. As we mentioned, we're going to be signing on for an additional software so that we can do online payment systems. We'll need an appropriation in 2020 if we decide to do that, and that'll be up probably for your next meeting next Tuesday, so we can be in place for that. And that is, well, you have that proposal in front of you. That's the one-time upgrade for that. We have, going down now to page 2, attorney special prosecutor. You know, we're using the special prosecutor to try and get some of our fines and forfeited bail. I'm not sure there's a lot of bail these days and it's going very slowly. I don't know if that process, as we continue to try and work remotely, if that process will speed up, we may have additional costs associated with utilizing the special prosecutor, but that is one area where, despite the fact that we've lowered the revenues, we're still way high on collection of fines and tickets. Going down, buildings, equipment, buildings, utilities. We may see some savings on utilities now that we've done all the insulation work, now that we've got new HVAC equipment, and we hope that we could see a lower number there for the building. We will need to do a generator. You'll see in the capital plan there's an expense associated with generator. That's a minimum expense. I think we're actually going to have to get a much larger size generator than was initially anticipated if we want to be able to power the whole building and all the operations associated with it, and including the parking lot. Computer expenses, there's actually a slight decrease in computer expenses. We have swapped out a fair amount of the equipment here in Town Hall, and I think in Highway Garage, and we feel that we can manage with just 15,000 for that line. Contingent, we have a relatively low contingent. Some municipalities run a much higher 10% of all expenditures contingent, which is sort of the limitation for contingent line that the comptroller recommends. Okay, moving right along. Same thing with utilities. There's a slight decrease in utilities for garage, as I mentioned before. Just we hope that there'll be some savings from the LED lights, but I don't think we want to book that just yet, so we have a better sense. Rec park, the rec park lines are fairly consistent. There is money in there for a summer rec program. We'll see if that actually materializes. But at this point, we hope that that will be the case, that we have summer recreation. All right. Moving right along, cemetery. I know one of the requests.
Can anyone hear me? I have a question, please.
Yes, Teresa?
You skipped over the superintendent of highways clerical and the superintendent of highways general, and I did send in some information, and I wanted to ask you if you're going to be making any changes in those two lines.
Yeah.
I did indicate that the clerical, you're not able to keep up with the workload, and I did indicate in the general that I asked for a 16% decrease, and instead I got a 56% decrease, and that wasn't really in line with the rest of the elected officials in the town as far as their general fund decreases. And I'd like you to help me understand why that fund was decreased so severely when nothing was spread around to the other general funds for the elected officials.
Okay, sure. In that fund, in that line, budget line, that includes the highway school that happens in the spring of each year. And so the expectation is that that probably wouldn't take place. But if it does, we certainly can adjust that budget line. And again, just to go back to what I said initially, we do all the time change specific budget lines, and certainly we can change that budget line, if that were to materialize. And I think that was the largest expense associated with that budget. Yeah.
And that's pretty much a discretionary budget line for the person who has access to it. And I understand, that you want to cut costs, but to just single out one person for 56% and leave everybody else who was an elected official at either 0 or 20% or actually increase, to me didn't seem like it was fair.
Yeah. Well, there's different. Go
then
ahead.
I'm in the situation that I have to ask every time for that increase, and for the amount that I'm asking for, I really am disappointed that this wasn't even discussed and that I had to bring it up.
Okay.
I would ask that the board consider doing a 25% reduction instead of a 56% reduction.
Okay. Yeah, and just in response to on the general lines, there were additional costs associated with mailings or related to COVID that went through those other lines, and so that might explain why there isn't a commensurate reduction in the general lines there as well. But
I'm
again,
not
we
really
can
convinced.
we can revisit those. Again, we're trying to do a bare bones budget here, and you know, as we see 2020 close and we see what the beginning of spring of 2021, certainly if the conference is running in April, we would want to appropriate all those monies associated with the conference and get that line up back to where it was. All right. Moving right along to, I think we were at,
We're at Rec Park.
yep, we were moving past the rec park. I was just mentioning that the rec Director John has asked for a tractor, a replacement tractor for 2021, and for the capital programs. When you look at the capital programs, I've pushed off expenditures to 2022, and should, for some miraculous reason, economics look better, that we can bring them back into 2021, then of course we would go ahead and do that. But with regard to both the equipment for the rec department and for highway, I've put that off until 2022. And in the case of 2022, you'll see we have some debt that'll be rolling off on highway equipment. All right, that's with rec. Veterans, I think we've frozen many of these lines to be the same as what they were historically. Lowered the equipment again for cemetery. We were expecting more reimbursement. This is another line which is going to underperform on the revenue side. We were supposed to get reimbursed from New York State $32,000 for the equipment. We've only received a quarter of that reimbursement. And I should tell you, well, we'll get to the revenues, but we're reducing our expectations on the state-supported programs. Retirement, state retirement, that's a good number. We know that number already, and gets those figures early on in the year. Social Security, Medicare, workers' compensation. Anytime we change compensation for an employee, it changes many lines. There's a lot of costs associated with that. Okay, hospital and medical insurance, that better than 8% increase is factored in there. We have additional retiree insurance expenses as well. And then we have our principal and interest for our capital projects, campus improvements. I'll just highlight that. Those two lines are the lines for the borrowing. So we've already borrowed for the highway garage, so you won't see that as an expense for the solar, rather, on the highway garage. And we expect that that will produce some savings again for that line. Okay, so that's all I have for A, expenses. A, revenue. So let's talk about A, revenues for a little bit. Pilots are fixed. Interest and penalties, that's a fairly consistent number. That's 17,000. In theory, it could go higher, I guess, if the economy is bad and more people have difficulty paying their taxes. Franchise fees, and prior year, there's a little adjustment we get each year for that. We haven't changed that expectation. Again, it all depends. Are more people cutting the cord, or are the new houses signing up for cable as more and more of us work remotely? And one of the things that we want to work on for the folks at home, One of the requests that I get often is to assistance to try and get Spectrum or Charter to build out their infrastructure, because we still have several roads, many roads, in fact, in our township that don't have cable. And as you can imagine, families are struggling to either work remotely or teach their children or help their children rather learn remotely. And so building out cable, and that is something I'm working with Spectrum right now on. Okay, so we have, so there's a figure there for general services, other governments. As you know, the school districts contribute to the cost of operating the rec park because they use the fields a lot. That revenue, some of that revenue could be in jeopardy again. It was this year, as they were not able to, and last year, either because of construction or COVID, able to use the facilities. So that's an area where there could be some risk on the downside for revenue. All right, continuing on. Let's go to one area that's particularly weak. I think I mentioned it earlier, fines and forfeited bail. In 2019, we had $55,000 in revenue in there. We took the adopted budget and lowered it down to $35,000, but you can see as of 2/3 of the year, we've only received $12,000. And I think the last check we got was in the hundreds of dollars. So our expectation for 2020 is still too high. We're going to have to make a budget adjustment before the year's end. And so those are continuing risks to our fund balance numbers. And we are projecting right now $34,000 for 2021. And I would say that that's mostly fines at this point, that we would be projecting some for 2021 and a backlog for 2020. If you go down to state aid, this is what I was referencing earlier, AIM payment, 26,000. So we've been encouraged to budget all state aid, whether it's the CHIPS program or the AIM program, for 20% less than we were receiving. And then if there should be some support for New York State's funding, and I did just hear today that apparently the negotiations in Washington have been told to conclude, and we're not going to have a package before Election Day. But if there should be some, perhaps New York State will be in a position to restore back to 100%. State aid mortgage tax, right now the mortgage tax numbers are coming in well. How long that lasts, that temporary sort of migration away from urban environments, we don't know. I don't think it's wise to project that it's going to continue for very long, but certainly, we could use the revenue while it is increasing. And same thing with state aid youth. We get that $5,000 because we run a program, and if we don't run the program, then we won't receive those revenues. So won't have those expenses associated with it. So that's the A fund. Town board members, did you have any additional questions on A fund expenses or revenues? If not, we can move right into B. Okay. B, we're pretty consistent here. We're holding the funding for police the same. We have over time tried to increase our police budget. As you know, we don't maintain a police force, but we contract with the village police, and they have been providing us service for quite some time now under that agreement. But we are freezing the number this year at 80,000, and we have reduced one budget line that reference street signs, and that's deliberately because we hope to have some success, or at least find out whether or not we're going to have some success in determining our own speed limits, and it probably at this point, while the question is out there, it wouldn't be prudent for us to replace more speed limit signs if we do get successful and want to have those reduced to different numbers. Hannaford Street striping, that's a regular thing.
I have a
Again,
question about the traffic control signs, please.
yeah, okay,
They're not just the speed limit signs,
right.
stop signs, the yield signs, the curve signs, the chevrons. So I'll take it that if we expend this funding, that you will increase it as needed for the traffic control signs on the roads?
Absolutely, yeah. I think,
Okay.
as Teresa, you've come to us and you need more funding.
Pardon me?
Yeah, we will take a look at does that all transpire? Okay. Staffing in the building and zoning department. The building department's going to need a replacement vehicle, or at least work done to this existing vehicle. So we'll be looking into that in 2021. I don't know that we can fund that. However, we'll see what transpires. But there's some rust in the bed of the pickup truck. Municity, that is what we know to be the cost for 2021. I don't think we've got an update on that, have we, Anne, on the proposed fees for the building and zoning department from you?
I haven't seen any new fees.
Yeah.
I think Matt sent out an email asking for a new schedule, but I haven't seen anything come across my desk.
Yeah. We have, in moving right down the line there, electric service streetlights. So as I mentioned before, we'll be retrofitting our streetlights with LED. We hope that produces savings, and it's going to be, hopefully a very successful project. We'll be able to actually control the streetlights. We'll be able to dim the streetlights. It'll give us greater flexibility. We'll own them. We've owned the streetlights since September 1st. We had our bill for September. It was significantly less than the bills that we get from Central Hudson when they own them. So we do hope to be able to pass those savings on to both the taxpayers and the residents within the lighting districts. Sidewalks general, that's all maintenance stuff. Zoning code revisions. Planning has a payroll. There's that stagnant number of planning, engineering, TNA, and that's an escrow account. So that number is way off for 2020, but that's the fees that applicants pay. Okay, the grant project. We reinstitute any grant lines that are open at the end of the year. We expect many of these close, but not all of them. So recycling. So let's talk about recycling for a second for the folks at home. So we have revamped, like all our departments, we've asked them to do more with less. And we thank TJ and his crew over there at recycling, that they've stepped up to the plate, and what they've been doing is a continuation of what we did during COVID, which is working with a roll-off container. We now are able to collect the garbage from the residents, and we're able to charge them a lot less than the hauler was planning to charge them. And what this does is helps us with the deficit, the growing deficit that has been created by two things. One, China not buying recyclables from the United States, so the cost of recycling recyclables has gone up dramatically, and also those increasing costs that have been passed on to us by the hauler. And so typically we will generate a little more money on Saturday than our costs are for the garbage alone. So what's proposed in this budget, which I think is very important, is that we are going to open up the recycling center to our residents, our taxpayers. There's really no reason we should be charging them to access a facility that they pay for with their taxes. And so they'll support that facility by, bringing their garbage there. And so the plan is to mail with their tax bills a recycling sticker to them. And so we'll be ensuring that we are not discriminating against folks who want to use public facilities, but, are struggling financially. So that's in the proposal. And so you'll see dramatic changes in both the expense and also the revenue side of the recycling center. And also just from a efficiency standpoint, during COVID, this is a much smarter way to proceed to be able to just send everybody a sticker instead of having them come in one by one or do it through our Dropbox if we're still doing that during the course of the winter time. Okay, and then we have one transfer from the B fund, and that is to the highway fund, and that is to pay for the principal and interest associated with the Stony Brook Culvert project, which is complete. And that culvert project came out of, the additional funds needed came out of the B fund reserve. So we have a reduced B fund. And just to go over September, the end of September, up to the minute, fund balances for A, it's just under $500,000, so it's 492,000. For B, it's 817,000, and for DB is 369,000 for a total of 1.679 for those three funds. And again, some of our revenue lines are underperforming. We may have one revenue line or two overperforming with our reduced expectations. So B fund revenues, here we are. Sales tax is the majority of the revenue for the B fund. And so for our quarterlies, we spoke about this during our change in staffing in our reduced budgets. We are guaranteed by a 2013 agreement with Dutchess County to have a minimum of $370,000 distributed to us, regardless of the amount that's collected by the county. When they crafted that agreement, some municipalities received less money initially, but as the economy grew and more sales tax revenue came in, there was an increased distribution, a ratio, an allocation, if you will, to the local municipalities. We had anticipated in 2021 that we would receive a growth factor for 2020 taxes. So if you remember, they collect them all for the 12 months of 2020. We don't actually receive it until March of the ensuing year. We had anticipated somewhere in the neighborhood of $265,000. We have projected here, and of course this is the best guesstimate we can do based upon what's transpired over the 8 months of data that we have out of the comptroller's office, that we might see somewhere in the neighborhood of $70,000 as a growth factor. So that would leave a deficit of $195,000 over expectations. So I will let you know that we did discuss months ago about the potential to have a shortfall of $200,000. And depending upon how this last quarter the economy behaves, that $70,000 could be up 40,000, it could be down 40,000. So we really need to keep a close monitor on these revenues. Okay, and there's that figure again for the escrow accounts for planning projects. We are starting to see a little bit more planning. That tends to be sort of seasonal in the fall. People do more planning, and then the construction projects take place oftentimes in the springtime. We have a conservative estimate, maybe for building permits of $40,000, but I did see that Steve had submitted an estimate of $30,000 for next year. I'm hoping he's pessimistic and that in fact we will do a little better than that. Last year we collected $55,800. And there you have those revenues for garbage collection fees, which are replacing the $6,300 that we were receiving for recycling stickers. And that's the B fund. Any questions on any of those particulars of the B fund? Okay. Let's move right into DB then, the last major fund. And so we have, let's get to some of the lines here. Many of the lines are at or near requested by the department, and I'll explain some of the ones that deviate a little bit. In trying to balance the budget so we wouldn't have to pull out of fund balances, it seemed appropriate, even though we've increased our local contribution to major road improvements, to lower it for this year, and potentially, depending upon how the economy does in 2021, it could be a little lower again for 2022. And then hopefully we can go back to increasing those levels in 2023. You'll see that the larger decrease, however, is should New York State have to reduce their contribution to CHIPS, Pave New York, and EWR, that will result in $35,000, excuse me, $36,000 less than anticipated.
Quick question there. So the CHIPS and the Pave New York and the EWR does that fall under the recommendation for 20% less budgeting that you talked about before?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And so, and so do these figures include that 20% reduction?
They do. Yes, they do.
Okay. All right.
If
great.
you look in those budget lines, there's a reduction in CHIPS of 26,000, a reduction in Pave New York of 6-ish, a reduction in EWR of 5. And that's
right.
where
Okay.
you
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong line. Okay.
No, that's no worries. No worries. Okay, and then moving down along the lines, close to or near budget request, but we did not hit all those lines. Diesel and gasoline have been lowered, both lowered because the price of both has dropped, pretty significantly. If that should change, if the winter season becomes a real bear, then of course we might need to increase those. Also, the shared services arrangement is going to impact many of these lines, and hopefully we will have a shared services arrangement with the village. But some of these dollars will be billed to them as they bill to us for the service itself. So let's continue down the line. There we have sand and salt. There was a request to increase salt, but two reasons why I didn't go any higher than 90. In fact, I think 90 is going to be high, is because historically salt has been more per ton than it is this year. It's at a very low level. And the other reason is, again, if we do enact a shared services with the village, some of those salt and sand dollars will be billed to them in addition to what we already bill to them as they bill us for the service itself. And so what I've allocated for 2021 in advance of any agreement, and I know the village is discussing this evening at their meeting, And it will take a few weeks, I think, to flush it out, and hopefully we can come to some agreement. But certainly for 2021, we want to at least acknowledge and allocate some monies. $20,000 is what I put in the budget. If we were to enact an agreement, we would need to make a budget adjustment in 2020 as well, because as you know, the winter doesn't start January 1st. So we'll see what everybody comes up with for a proposal to present to both boards, and we'll see what's available. The budget line is called Shared Services Temporary Help. There could be a determination that it might just be better or cheaper or easier to hire temporary help should we need it during the course of any type of storm or
I
temporary
have a
reduction.
question on
Sure,
that
sure,
shared services temporary helpline.
sure.
Can you help me understand what the temporary help would look like? Do you have an idea? Is that a per diem?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be hourly, it could be per diem. I think that, I think we would look to you, Teresa, to make a proposal to us. If you do know of somebody who might be interested in doing some temporary help,
Well, I was just interested in your view because I hadn't requested a temporary helpline.
right.
I thought maybe you had something in mind that you had.
Well, sure. I mean, if we need an additional person because somebody is out, or if we need an additional person because we've got a real bear of a storm, and you want to hire somebody just for the night or the day, or have somebody on call, much like we do with the wing persons. Then I think that we would certainly be open to that if that's a preferable way to accomplish any situation where you think we need a little extra help during a storm.
Is that the shortfall between the staffing that I had before and the staffing that I have now? Is that meant to take that up?
I think it's meant to help bridge the gap if you feel that there's a gap, and I know that this will be your first year with a crew of 6. So we'll learn from that. It is sort of the town of Rhinebeck has the same staffing level. I know that the town of Milan has even less, but
Well,
each municipality is different, and so we'll look to see what that staffing level is. But we want to ensure that there's a mechanism, whether it's the shared services or temporary help, should we need to fill a void or fill a gap.
Okay, and
Okay.
that line also, if the town wants to think about what their plan B is going to be, if there's coronavirus in the department, or if people have to quarantine because of coronavirus, because of the resurgence that's expected to come along, we would be looking to the town to provide a plan for covering the crew if they were affected. We don't have anything in place, and winter's about 6 weeks away. So we really need to discuss that at some point, and it might be a budget issue.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. State retirement.
We
know-
don't
sorry.
need to really go into detail on that, but I would be interested. I'm not quite sure what Teresa's asking for there, where she says she wants a plan from the town. So I'm not really sure what she means by plan, and that doesn't have to be discussed tonight because this is budget related, but I just would need more clarification on that.
Well, who would we
Sure.
look to? Would we look to the Village of Red Hook, which we have an IMA with? Would we look to the town of Rhinebeck, who we have an IMA with, for assistance? And I think, if you think in terms, Christine, of what the fire companies do, a lot of times they cover each other. And I think, to some degree, highway departments are already doing this. They assist each other when they need to haul certain things. So I guess the point is, if there's something on paper, who's the first call going to be? Should the highway department experience what town hall experienced back in 2017, where everybody got the flu except for 1 or 2 individuals? What is that plan? So I think it's a good idea to try and jot something down, and at least, even if it doesn't get enacted that way, at least we have like the disaster preparedness plan. We have a tentative idea of how we want to respond, because we may have to do it very quickly.
And to speak to Christine, of having a plan, there was an email circulated, and that's what I'm referring to, that said that all municipalities should have plans in place if COVID comes back. And so we would fall under the umbrella of the municipalities plan. I don't know if it came from the insurance company or if it came from the state, but it was encouraging the town board to have something, some sort of guidance for the departments if they were hit with COVID. That's what I'm referring to.
All right, I just wasn't sure if it was something else besides that you were talking about.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And while we're on the topic, because New York State had urged us to come up with a reopening plan, and as you know, we have not reopened town hall. I think now it's starting to look like perhaps we made a wise decision. As the number of cases increases, and we have seen in New York State now the positivity rate has increased, especially a little south of us. So I'm projecting, and we'll see, I'm projecting that town hall may not open until sometime in the spring, until we all feel comfortable that what happened in 2017 with the flu doesn't happen with COVID here in your local government. So that's the expectation. We'll see what happens. Let's hope for a vaccine soon. Okay, workers' comp, Social Security, those are all numbers that are generated based upon the level of staffing and the compensation. Again, hospital and medical insurance continues to go up dramatically. It's budgeted for the increase that's coming in the spring, and we know what to expect from our carrier. And then we spoke about some of the equipment that we're paying off and hope to have paid off in the next couple of years, so we can go ahead and buy more equipment.
And Robert, I had asked for the capital equipment 10-year plan that you crafted, and I haven't seen that yet. Is it in this packet that I got, the budget, or is it somewhere else?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and I'll highlight that. I think I have that on the screen, Teresa, so I'll bring that up for you. Let's, before we get to that, let's do revenues. And some of those revenue numbers: transportation service, other governments, billable services, other funds, a lot of that depends upon how much the fire departments are using of fuel, how much the school district needs sand and salt, our arrangement with the village, as I mentioned earlier, whether that increases or decreases the numbers. So we'll have to see, but that is probably the most significant number at this point, absent the CHIPS money, Consolidated Highway Aid, and you see that figure here. If that should go up, then we might be in a position to correspondingly raise those numbers in the expense side. And then there's that transfer from other funds, from the B fund, paying for the Stony Brook Culvert project. Very quickly, for the fire districts, were there any questions about that? Some of those numbers may change. They're sort of wiggling around. We'll have to see. There's been a bill passed up in Albany to increase the LoSAP contribution. And for the folks at home, volunteer firefighters dedicate a lot of time, energy, and effort, and they incur some costs associated with volunteering. And LoSAP is a stipend. Right now, they just receive a few $100s each year. There's a mechanism that would allow them to receive up to $1,200 each year to offset the costs that they incur going to fires and emergencies. And so that's something we will want to look at for 2021. That would require a public referendum. The public would get to decide that if they wanted to increase that. We have lower workers' compensation costs associated with it. That's the good news. The bad news, however, is that's a reflection of how many people are listed as active volunteers. And so we want to do whatever we can to maintain healthy levels and provide the support for those volunteers, because a paid force is something that is very expensive and would definitely change the financial dynamics of this community. All right, and then Consolidated Lighting, we have the same number as last year. Let's see what happens once we swap out our street lights. We have some technology that's going along with that, as I said, that will allow for dimming and so and other things. So we'll see how that transpires. We might be able to lower costs there. The water district, most of this is request, bless you.
Thank you.
And it's fixed at a balanced budget. I do know that Hank has been coming in trying to raise rates over the last few years so that he accumulates enough of a capital reserve to do the tank when it's time. Any questions on water? Okay. So let's look over just the impact here. And as you can see, the budget keeps everything flat. People will not be paying more taxes or less taxes, provided there's no change to their individual assessment. And if you look down at the bottom there, what it shows is that there is an increase in the dollars. So there'll be 7,000 change more dollars available for the A fund, about 9,000 more dollars available for the DB fund. And all of this is accomplished just by keeping the tax rates the same. And that's in part because the tax roll is growing. And here again is a summary page. I'll do a share for you. Let's go back. There we are, showing the tax rates. No change. Showing the increase in the amount available for those funds. Taxable assessed values. These are estimates. We don't know our final roll until next month, later on, but this is a good approximation. We see most of the growth happening in the town, outside of the villages, in case you were wondering. And here we are for appropriations. As you can see, we modify our budgets all the time. There's money going in and out of the various funds. When we bring grant-funded projects, that always skews all the numbers. It makes it very hard to compare the numbers from one year to another. And here we go to the tax rates and the percent change. And you can see it's essentially flat. The various special districts, library, water district, consolidated lighting. And here's the implication to the average household. We show this sheet each year and we say for the average house or the median house in Dutchess County. And I think when we first started doing this, the median was $250 maybe. Last year was $275. The median household purchase price in Dutchess County is currently listed at $295. I wouldn't be surprised if that goes up over $300 shortly. So we do it on the median house, and if they were living in the village, That would be their total figure, $311. If they are living in the town, they would be paying both of those with a total of $675 for town taxes. And there's your fire district amounts. And this sheet just shows if we had to raise taxes above and beyond the tax cap, that we would have some allowable from previous years. You can increase by 1.5% above the tax cap if you haven't raised to the tax cap. Here's the fund balance report as of the end of this month. I mentioned some of the decreases. So as expected, we used several $100,000 to complete those rec projects. The final bills are coming in now. We'll have a better sense depending upon how some of our revenue lines come in. It's quite possible we'll finish the year with about $500,000 in unappropriated fund balance for the A fund. That falls right in line with our range that we indicated for the comptroller that we would move towards. They wanted us to start moving lower on our percentages for some of these fund balances. And so A is projected to be somewhere around $500,000. Let's see how this quarter transpires. B, we've tapped in about $100,000 we've pulled from it, largely because of the culvert project, but also reduced revenues again. Let's see how the revenues come in to see where we finish with that total. Same thing with DB. Typically, we tend to see some unappropriated funds in DB, and that number goes up towards the end of the year. We have some money left in our capital accounts related to the rec park projects. We have some grant monies coming in, and again, we'll see how it all ends up, but I'm anticipating somewhere around $500,000 for the A fund. And there are the rest of the balances. Now, I don't show the capital on my copy here. Ann, would you mind, could you do a screen share and just do the 10-year capital?
Yep. Says I can't share my screen while you're sharing yours.
Got another try. You realize we're going to have to learn Microsoft Teams if we switch
There's
over.
the capital plan.
Thank you very
That's-
much.
Yes. So
Oh,
that's the summary.
okay.
Is there a tab you want me to go to?
Highway equipment. I think Teresa had a question about highway equipment. All right. Well, I don't have that. This is not the copy
This is the copy that's in the binders?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not the one. So let's go to highway equipment. Could you click on that one?
That's her inventory list.
That's the inventory list. Okay. So
Yes.
that. All right. That's problematic. So let me see if I can send over to you my copy, but I can walk you through it. So just to understand the changes I made to that. I moved the Bobcat skid steer to 2022, 52,000. Let me pull it up on my
Okay. And the backhoe, the same thing, or?
backhoe I removed. Again, going towards shared services. I know that you had asked for a new backhoe, Teresa, but looking at shared services, the town has a backhoe, the town has a payloader. The village has a fairly recent new backhoe as well. And so looking towards seeing whether or not we can certainly, at least in the short term, but maybe longer than that, share that backhoe. I know you have some concerns about having severe storms where all of those pieces of equipment would be needed, and that is certainly understandable.
Yeah, because probably in 2022, we're going to need that plow truck instead.
In 2022? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
So I don't know what you've switched around, but it'll probably change again when I get to take a look at it because the plow truck is paid.
okay. Okay, fine. So, we'll put that in there for now, the plow truck for 2022 to
Is that the 254?
254.
Okay.
Yeah, the plow truck by then will be probably 22 years old. So it'll cost more to maintain and it's not going to be safe.
Yeah.
We've been trying to get it for a couple of years now, and I know that you've been putting it off, which is fine, but there comes a point in time where if you don't have a plow truck, you can't rent or borrow one, and then you're down a truck for the winter, which is really not the best case scenario.
Right, but as a reminder to folks, how many plow trucks do we have right now?
We have 6,
Okay,
and we have 6 men.
okay. So are you
So
thinking of
6 trucks, 6 men, 60 miles.
Okay, and you're thinking of having 6 routes then?
Well, that would be optimum.
Okay,
You'd only be able to start with 5,
okay,
but eventually we would like to have 6 routes again because it's more efficient to plow faster. Really can't, when you talk about doing more with less, I'm trying to picture how we're going to plow more snow with less trucks. And I really can't wrap my head around it. So if
okay,
we can get back to 6 routes and 6 trucks with 6 men, that would be ideal. In order to do that, we are going to need to replace that then 21, 22-year-old truck.
okay. I did make one other change though. I was concerned about the blacktop paver. If we're going to start doing a little more paving ourselves and when that would need to be purchased. But if it can stay in 2023, that would be preferable because the 2022 request is pretty high. It's over 300,000 now.
Well,
if
the
you think we
blacktop paver, we can always contract out blacktopping, but you
Okay,
can't contract out plowing.
okay,
So
Very
that
good.
was just a used paver if the budget allowed. That's not half as important as the plow truck. The plow truck is really a critical piece of equipment for next year. It has been, but it's been put off. So I know that at one point you said you didn't want to start paying for a plow truck until 2022.
Yeah.
So it looks like our plans will align.
Yeah. We'll have some debt rolling off and then we'll be able to replace it in new equipment. Okay, that's all I have as far as changes for a capital plan. I think, once again, we'll see how 2021 transpires, how the economy behaves over the short and medium term, and then we can take a look at some of these capital requests in this department and other departments and see how we can move forward. I think we have in there the rec park for 20,000 for the tractor. Let's take that out of there, and that shouldn't be in there.
Want to move it to the next year?
Right.
Okay.
And then the same, the highway solar stays in there. So that's a 2021. That's there. Carpeting comes out.
Just 0. Mm-hmm.
And that generator is just way low. I mean, the generator is going to come in at about close to $30,000 for the size that we need.
What year are we going to do that in?
2020. Well, we may, if we can, do it in 2020 because we've had issues with our generator and we can't have town hall not operating. So let's put it in 2021 if we can accelerate it and get it done. The cost can be split between the 2 years.
All right, so 15 here.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, this is an old document. We've changed out our furnace at Town Hall. If you're watching at home, we'd be happy to tell you that we took out the oil tank just the other day, and we are using a much cleaner air source heat pump system. And front door barrier, it would be nice to get that. The clerk's office has been asking for that for a while. At this point, I would take it out of there because I don't anticipate we're going to be open, and I don't anticipate that that's going to be an issue. Why don't we put that to 2022? And I think that's it. I think we're good there. We can revisit this next year when we have a better sense of the economy.
Okay. Close it and stop sharing.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So, if there are no further questions, I'd like to propose that we adopt this as the preliminary budget and put it up for a public hearing on Wednesday, the 14th. Can you all quickly check your calendars, town board members, and let me know if you can do that? 7 o'clock.
I'm good.
Okay.
Should work for me.
Works for you, Jacob. Thank you. Christine?
I am checking at 7. So Wednesday, October 14th.
That's right. We would notice it in the paper. Deanna, we would need to get that notice out tomorrow.
So is that a special meeting?
That would be a budget public hearing on the budget.
Okay, because we have the town board meeting the night before, so we just have it the next day.
We'd have it the next day.
Okay.
Is that okay
Yes.
to have the 2 in the row? Okay.
How are you going to have people comment on the budget? Are they going to be zooming in or?
So the same system that we have now, they can comment in advance and on the budget, and we'll take those comments. Yep. Well, that's in the public hearing notice, and so that will go out in the notice that Deanna prepares. Okay. All right. So is there a motion to approve the preliminary budget
So move.
as revised? Thank you, Bill. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Christine. All in favor, Bill Hamill,
Aye.
Jacob Testa,
Aye.
myself. Thank you very much. Thank you all for participating tonight. Everybody stay healthy as we approach into the fall. And, we'll keep you updated. One of the things we want to update you on, and hopefully soon, is our request to move the polling site from Town Hall. As you know, Town Hall is closed to the public. And I hope that we'll have some good news for you in the next couple of days on that front. Okay. Good night, everyone. Stay healthy.
Good night. Robert, good job. Good job.
Thank you.
Ann, good job.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne, for all your help.